Makes sense.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Jenna.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming today and joining us for the Civic Life Lunch. My name is Jenna Logue, and I'm one of the program managers at the student programs on the student programs team at Tisch College. And today we're going to talk about one of the signature opportunities for students to engage in the community. The program itself, called Tisch Summer Fellows, has been around for just about 20 years. We have some alumni and a current student that are going to share their experiences with you today. And I'm going to just offer a brief introduction to the program so that you have some context over the years, how it's looked and what the program itself is designed to do. So as I said, it's been around for about 20 years. It is an opportunity for students from across the university, including medical school, veterinary school, Fletcher undergraduates. All students are able to apply to the program and engage in a full-time fellowship position during the summer. And the work is typically at a nonprofit organization or public-facing kind of government work, something like that, in order to not only develop the career competencies of the participants, but also to really dig into their civic learning and enhance the knowledge, skills, and values that they need to make social change and really understand the depth of social issues of interest to them and how they have an impact on the general community, both locally and globally. Historically, the program has included opportunities globally and has included opportunities in New York and DC. And we really rely strongly on an alumni network of people to host our fellows. And one of the things that has changed over the years is the size of the program and kind of where we focus our work. Currently, we have about 30 students that engage in the program over the course of a 10-week period in the summer. And they are mostly in Boston and in Providence. And medical school students engage with their main partners. So we have primarily East Coast local students that are able to engage in the in a place-based experience. So we have in-person and ways for people to engage in person together. Over the years, during the pandemic, for example, which Julie will talk a little more about, there were primarily remote opportunities, and we've really been able to keep the program shifting and changing with the needs of the world. Though no matter what happens and how the program might have changed over the years, three things really remain consistent. In addition to the mission that I mentioned about career and civic competencies, participants are able to receive, thanks to generous support and funding, a living allowance to do this work. That is so that we're able to be accessible to people that maybe aren't able to work without pay over the summer. So they're going to be granted access to experiences that maybe they wouldn't have otherwise if there wasn't a living allowance attached to it. And also so that some of our program partners who couldn't necessarily afford to hire and pay staff on their own are able to get really great people in to support their missions through the fact that Tisch College and our funders are financially supporting students. The other piece of the program that hasn't changed over the years is the fact that in addition to the fellowship, we engage the students in programming that surrounds their experience, and that includes reflection sessions where they really dig into some of those social issues and their own experience, both with their civic pathway and their own way of looking at the world and community, and also some of their future planning and sort of the career skills and the day-to-day interactions of being in the workplace. So that is a time for them to come together with their peers and with a facilitator who at this current time is a staff person. In the past, it's been students, and also in the past, it's been alumni. So we've had a lot of different models for the reflection sessions. And the third piece that, we also do skills workshops and panels and things like that. And the third piece that hasn't changed and that will remain consistent with the program is the opportunity to network with alumni, whether that is through programming or mentoring or as a supervisor. At this point in the program, because it's been around for a while, we do have Tisch Summer Fellows supervisors that were Tisch Summer Fellows themselves when they were at school. So it's been a really nice way to watch this. Now, I myself haven't been at Tisch College for the full 20 years of this program, but I have been here. This will be my sixth summer, I think, seventh maybe. I have to do the math quickly. I started in February 2020, so I've seen all these fine people and a few before them and many since go through the program. And I've just want to thank our panelists. We have Chad, Julie, and Connor. When they get started, they'll talk a little bit more about themselves. And I want to thank you for joining us today and taking time to share with your peers or your current students, peers and alumni, staff, everybody in the audience about your experience. And I also want to thank the communications team for putting this on and for everybody that's here today. So I will now move over to my questions, which are here. And at the end, we'll have a chance for you all to ask questions. One thing I'll do before I forget, if you're a student here, I encourage you to look at the Tisch College website. There are 2 information sessions coming up about the 2026 program. And you'll also read on our events page information about other civic life lunches and programming through Tisch College. So if you go to the Tisch College website, you'll be able to find links to register and sign up for any of those. And I'm happy to talk more about that at the end as well. So to start, and let's just go from Chad down for the first question. So if the 3 of you would please just talk a little bit, maybe a brief introduction and talk about your time as a Tisch Summer Fellow. So specifically tell us sort of what you did there, why you were there, what the organization was all about, and give us that picture to get started.
Sure. This is
Oh. Do you want just this one? Just push it up.
There we go. I'm Chad Fisher. I work for the City of Boston Parks and Recreation Department. I've been there since March. I'm really excited to be there. I'm doing a lot of really interesting work around planning for citywide climate resilience and a lot of data management of our parks data. I was a Tisch Summer Fellow in 2023 as part of my required internship at the Friedman School of Nutrition. I was at Speak for the Trees Boston, where I did a lot of interesting work updating their tree equity maps. So looking at how tree canopy intersected with heat and health outcomes, and then also doing a lot of interesting work helping to prototype for the Boston Tree Alliance, which is a nonprofit and city partnership dedicated to tree planting on private property. So I helped generate a big database that was searchable of all the parcels in Boston with some data about each of those. I was really excited to be there. It was the first Tisch Summer Fellow they had at Speak for the Trees. They've had quite a few interns in the past, but no Tisch Summer Fellows. And as a graduate student, I felt like I was really unlocking a lot of potential for the organization that they hadn't really had before. So I feel like my work has really lived on there for way past my time there. So super excited to have that opportunity.
Hi everyone, my name is Julie Silverman. I was a Tisch Summer Fellow in summer of 2020. So like Jenna alluded to, I was of course, COVID hit in March, and I had just done in-person interviews for Tisch Summer Fellows, and I did my fellowship with the Center for Health, Environment, and Justice, and I was so grateful to be able to do that experience remote. I had a lot of friends who had their had their internships canceled because they were supposed to be in person. I currently work at the Environmental Protection Agency of the federal government. I'm actually currently furloughed. So once I've been furloughed for the past 3 weeks, and once the government reopens, which it appears for better or for worse is happening soon, I will be back to work. So fingers crossed of just having my job. But I work, so obviously EPA does a lot of work with cleaning up air and water for communities across the country. And I work in the air division at EPA in the Boston office. And so one would say in the past that I would do climate work focused on, I work on the electric school bus program, the Clean Ports program, which works on port electrification funding, and then a grant that's diesel emission reduction Action Act grants, which focus on taking highly polluting old diesel vehicles off the road and putting newer ones on the road. And so in the past, one could say I did climate work, and now I could say I do clean air work. And so, yeah, so that's been my experience post-grad. I graduated in 2022. And yeah, Center for Health, Environment, and Justice was actually my first experience in the environmental advocacy space. And it was a really pivotal point in my kind of start of my career, in that I realized that's really what I wanted to do. So when I was at CHEJ, which is their mission is to provide justice to communities that are disproportionately impacted by toxic chemicals. So a lot of communities across the country are impacted by so many different forms and types of chemicals that are usually created by industry and can have devastating health impacts. And so I was working at the nonprofit educating folks across the country about the impacts of those toxic chemicals on health, how we can protect families and children and everyone from those chemicals, and doing communications work via social media and such to kind of raise awareness about those issues. So it was a great experience. I think I came into Tufts thinking I was doing environmental engineering, and I kind of figured out, hey, I want to take all these cool classes, and that's not going to allow me to do that. And so I very quickly pivoted to environmental studies on the policy track and biology major. But I was told in high school that in order to be kind of successful in my career, that I needed to be an engineer. And so that's kind of the path that I went down. And then Tisch Summer Fellows kind of taught me, hey, like, I'm in the right space. There's so many opportunities. And being in the environmental space now, of course, we're in a crisis with climate crisis, and it's kind of the job market can be wonky, but there's always going to be work in the environmental space going forward, and more so as things get worse. So yeah, TSF was a great opportunity to kickstart my career, and I'm forever grateful for it.
Let's keep going.
Hi, my name's Connor. I'm a senior at Tufts. I'm studying clinical psychology and quantitative econ, which are very different things. Means I'm graduating in May, which is devastating. But I will say it's very affirming to hear them doing these really cool things. Post Tisch Summer Fellows makes me feel like maybe I can do cool things too. Anyways, I'm studying clinical psych and quant econ at Tufts. With Tisch Summer Fellows, I did the summer of 2024. I worked with the PD Green program. The PD Green program supports the academic goals of currently and formerly incarcerated students through one-on-one tutoring, and then I'm sure a lot of you have heard of the Tufts Prison Initiative through classes such as those. What did I do on a day-to-day basis for Tisch Summer Fellows? I think I'll probably talk about it more. Most of the merit came from who I got to talk to and expose myself to, and the experiences and perspectives that really guided me through my education and what I want to do with postgrad. But it was a lot of data entry, a lot of Salesforce. Did some interviews with some students that I know, for future tutors and people that get BTAs on campus. Kind of after the summer, I continued doing work tabling and continue to recruit tutors, which I keep doing today. So still very involved. Love to talk about PD Green, and everyone knows it. I talk about it with my friends ad nauseum. But yeah, I think most of it, I think I could talk about doing Salesforce and data entry and how it's cool to learn the professional skills of, working with a very small nonprofit. And that was my first really real professional office experience. But I think, as I said, most of the merit came from the people I got to interact with, the fluency they gave me, and having these sorts of conversations about carcerality. And yeah, that's it.
All right, thank you all for that. So I'm going to shift just specifically for Chad and Julie, and then Connor next. Separate question. So both of you work in fields that are somewhat connected and related to the work that you did in Tisch Summer Fellows, and you alluded to that a bit, how that might have shaped you. Could you talk a little bit more about how your experience in Tisch Summer Fellows, whether that's directly or indirectly, shaped your job search and sort of where you ended up now at this point?
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the big things I got out of my Tisch Summer Fellowship was networking, for sure. My supervisor at Speak for the Trees was really great at introducing me to anyone in our network that kind of met my interests. So I ended up talking to people who were working in GIS at the Trust for Public Land. I networked with some people from the Nature Conservancy, from American Forests, just from a lot of different organizations that I otherwise wouldn't have contact with. And my current job at the city, I actually got through a connection that I had made as part of my Tisch Summer Fellowship. Part of the work I was doing there was working with the city's tree canopy data. And so my coworker now is the person who did that analysis. So I feel like that networking was definitely a big part of what kind of helped me land the job I'm currently at. I was first just kind of scattershotting throughout the world, all of the job applications anywhere. And I got an interview at the city for a different position, but one of my contacts was on the hiring committee. And so when I didn't get that position, then she encouraged me to apply for my current position. So I feel like that networking is key, even if you feel like it's something that's weird or awkward. We all have done it and we all will continue to do it. So please feel free to bother us for networking. I think the other major thing I got out of my Tisch Summer Fellowship was really some key demonstrations of real world and practical skills. I think I had done a lot of class projects and class projects are great, but they're not always super clear or relevant or fully brought to the end of their development or fruition. So at Speak for the Trees, I was able to do a lot of really clear building of interactive web maps, applications, websites, stuff like that. And then I could put that on my portfolio and tell people, look, this is what I can do. And those even helped other people sometimes find me and reach out and say, hey, I saw this thing that you made. Can you tell me more about it? So I guess those are really the two main things I'd say.
Yeah, I would say, like I mentioned, Tisch Summer Fellows was such a pivotal point in my career and kind of realizing that I am in the right space. I want to do environmental work and I can make this into my career and follow my passions in it without having that kind of engineering degree. And actually, I forgot to mention this, but it's good that I can say it in this question, that part of the program was, I guess I did my internship with Center for Health, Environment, and Justice, but I also helped Jenna organize an environmental career panel. And that was the highlights actually of I love the internship in a lot of different ways, but I got to reach out to Tufts alum in the environmental space and engineering, law, policy, doing nonprofit work, and brought in, I believe it was 4 or 5 different alum in the environmental space to speak to other Tisch Summer Fellows. And it was a really great kind of intro to networking. My first real networking experiences my sophomore year of college, and I met wonderful people, and actually one of those people, her name is Cindy Lewis, and she was and is a lawyer at the Environmental Protection Agency. And so I had never really had kind of real conversations with folks at EPA, and I got to know her and had a few conversations with her following the career panel that I brought her in for. And she actually, I don't know, I had applied for internships at EPA in the past and hadn't been successful. And she basically kind of boosted my confidence and said, you are kind of a great candidate for role here at EPA, like you're the people we're looking for, and kind of spoke with me more about how to successfully apply and think about getting a job at EPA. And I circled back with her years later, and we still have coffee chats to this day, and I'll see her around the office. So it's really a full circle moment, I'd say, from my first internship in the environmental advocacy space to my full-time career at EPA. So it's been very cool to see, and just very clear kind of starting point in my career to where I am now. Tisch Summer Fellows was one of the most impactful experiences while I was at Tufts. So would highly recommend applying if you're thinking about it. Once I think applications drop.
December 8th.
Yeah, December. There we go.
Excellent.
So I'm going to ask Connor to go back to Chad and Julie. So Connor, you're still here as a student. Some people in the audience might be students, first year sophomores. Maybe they're not quite thinking ahead just as far yet, but are wondering what's out there, what's going to happen, what does it look like. So I'm wondering if you, as a student who did Tisch Summer Fellows and came back to school, which Julie also did, so if you wanted to jump in, you're welcome. if you think of something. But how did Tisch Summer Fellows shape the way, if it did at all, you look at your studies, you look kind of at the things that you're doing here at Tufts, not necessarily thinking ahead, because that's the next question for you later.
Yes, it does. Well, that's good, because thinking ahead is terrifying as a student. But in terms of my time at Tufts, and excuse me for having, I have a very like romanticized view of all this, which isn't supposed to take away from like how serious justice system and carcerality issues are. I enjoyed it a lot. Issues are very serious. But what I learned in the P Green program, ideas such as anti-carcerality, looking at issues with our justice system, looking at the importance of education as a right, has fully been the lens through which I've looked at my academics through. Absolutely bar none. I have very tangible examples of this, like, one of my majors in clinical psych. Clinical psych has a program senior year where you work in a lab, and I'm looking at justice system diversion through education at Mass General Hospital, a very clinical implication of it. The whole reason I could do that is because of the fluency I gained from the PED program, because of the experiences I've spoken to. For another one for psych, I did an independent reading project on severe mental illness in the carceral system and how the prison system is horrible for people with mental illness. It perpetuates mental illness. It keeps people in the cycle, coming back in and out of prison. For quant econ, I did a project for my econometrics class looking at how education affects recidivism. So truly, I think what I did in Tisch Summer Fellows, I'm really happy I did it this summer of my sophomore year. It gave me a lens through which to look at my major. So it was like, okay, how am I going to take what I'm learning and like really apply it to this really important social issue? And I think that the PE Green program is like the reason I was supposed to come to Tufts. I think the PE Green program is, at the end of the day, the reason I did clinical psych and quant econ, because having the practical experiences, having the lived experiences of people that have been through a lot, having the real world I'm going to talk about and learn how to advocate for these sorts of things, I believe is what gives merit to academia in general, education in general, and like made me able to value my classes a lot more because I can understand why it's important. Tutoring students one-on-one taught me to appreciate education a lot more because they revel at the opportunity to dive into a reading and talk about it way more than the Medford students do. Because they appreciate it more, they appreciate the opportunity, and that like holds me really accountable to be like, okay, look at these people in this situation that are grasping on the education as something that's protecting them. Like, I have this opportunity on campus at Tufts University. Dang, I should really like take advantage of this. And I don't think that that's something necessarily unique to. I think it really shows itself for working in education and the justice system, like specifically. But I think any like nonprofit you work with, where you're hearing from different experiences and getting an understanding of these really complex social issues is going to give you, I know I've said this 3 times, like a lens through which to look at your academics in a way that will make your learning a lot more fulfilling. So that's, see what I mean by very romanticized, like, but truly, like, I mean what I say, and all those things are very genuine, and I loved it a lot, and it's helped my academics a lot.
So thank you. So Chad and Julie, walk us through as much as you're able to and as much as you can, given where you work and what you're doing. Walk us through a week in your job when you're not furloughed, I'm sorry. So what brings you satisfaction in the work, and what are some of the challenges in your work? I go first.
Yeah, great question. I think I described my week of work kind of running the spectrum of really, really small questions like, where is a bench? Where is a trash can? Where are the porta potties? And like that feels very not impactful, we'll say. All the way up to really large questions like, how is the park system getting resilient to stormwater flooding? How are we using trees across the city to mitigate urban heat impacts on pedestrians? So really this really nice diversity of problems that I work on. I think something unexpected when I took this position is just how much I've been able to kind of mold it to my own interests. When I was talking in the interview, I was kind of wary to take the job because they were looking for much more traditional urban planners. And if you know, well, I guess you guys don't know this about me yet, but my undergrad was in bioengineering. I did 2 years of AmeriCorps service during the pandemic. That led to me really liking food systems. I then came to Tufts to study food systems, took my first GIS class, and then I've worked with Carolyn at the data lab and just kind of taken off from there. So I think that's something that really brings me a lot of satisfaction is that I can see all the different experiences I've had before this job come into play, whether that's understanding complex problems in environmental spaces or helping people translate really technical concepts into easy to understand policy questions. I'd say something kind of challenging is just how much interdepartmental collaboration I have. So I work a lot with the planning department, the streets cabinet, and our like central IT department. So I've done a lot more project management than I was expecting to do. When I was working here at the data lab, I had a lot more ability to kind of like do administration things on my GIS and web mapping projects. But at the city, there's a lot more hoops to jump through and a lot more people who are specialized in different things that I need to tag in on my projects. So I think I'd say that's one of the more challenging things.
Yeah, so day in life, I guess a week, not during my furlough time, but pre-furlough at EPA, I would say, yeah, I do a lot of work with grantees. So big part of my role is, so like I said, working on the Clean School Bus program, I manage or like oversee a project that is deploying 85 electric school buses across New England. And that's still happening, which is great. I work with the grantees who are kind of using federal funds to implement that project and really just like tracking what they're doing, making sure they're on the timeline of things and ensuring that federal expenses and expenditures that they're drawing down on are in line with the benchmarks that they are making as they go forward. And I work on, with 2 other grantees in the Clean Ports program. So one is kind of helping electrify the port, basically allowing vessels to plug in at shore instead of basically idling and creating pollution for the local community. They're able to plug in and that just brings energy from the grid and they don't release those pollutants anymore. And then there's another there's a grant that, well, it's more, it used to be called Climate and Air Quality Planning. Now it's Air Quality Planning Grant, one could say now, basically decreasing emissions at in the Port of New Bedford to plan for the future and how they're going to protect the community from pollution that they're releasing at the port. So it's a lot of working with grantees, making sure these projects are happening, checking in with them, addressing any challenges that they have and issues that they need to overcome, and then making sure things are moving forward and that they're using federal funds responsibly. And yeah, I would say satisfaction from the work that I do is just seeing the work going forward, even given such crazy, challenging times, and just knowing that the work is still being done, whether it's in the headlines or not. Electrification projects are still happening. Maybe we call them clean air projects for communities. But yeah, the projects are still happening. I'm really grateful to still be able to do the work that I'm doing. And I guess challenges would just be like in my personal capacity, I'll say instead of my professional capacity, that just like the current administration is really tough to work under, especially with attack on federal workers and just trying to get rid of us. I'm just honestly surprised that I still have my job. So grateful that I'm able to continue the work. And I think ever since inauguration, it was kind of a fear of DOGE and people trying to get rid of federal workers and stuff. So happy that I'm able to continue the work of cleaning up the air and protecting communities across the country. But yeah, major challenge, but still grateful to be able to kind of move these really important, impactful projects forward that protect communities across the country from pollution that's being emitted.
So I have a couple more questions, and we'll open it up. So Chad, as you mentioned, prior to Tufts, after you did your undergrad at Rice, right? You were involved with AmeriCorps, so clearly have a civic mindset. Talk to us about how, or if, I'm assuming how, but if, you view the connection between your professional endeavors and your own civic engagement.
Yeah. So I think AmeriCorps really kind of was the time for me to really think about what I wanted to do. I was kind of in a very similar boat to Julie, where I got out of high school and I was told engineering. So I went to college for engineering, and then right as the pandemic was hitting, I was considering whether I wanted to get a PhD in what I was doing, whether I wanted to go work somewhere. And it was a really nice reset and pause that gave me time to actually think about what I wanted to do. In AmeriCorps, I went first to rural Missouri at the height of the pandemic to work at a botanical garden. And that was just a really funny experience, but really showed me like how interested I was in that kind of food system and environmental work. And then also just that I did have a lot of knowledge in that and could pursue it. And then it was a pretty easy decision for grad school. I got scholarship money through AmeriCorps, and the Friedman School at Tufts quadrupled that scholarship money as a match. So that was a super easy decision to make. It was the only place I applied for grad school. Yeah, and then took a GIS class, and kind of the rest is history. But I would say AmeriCorps kind of still informs. It was just a really good way to like put into practice what working at local government or nonprofits is like. I think it was a very real look at doing a lot with not a ton of resources, and also just like pushing things forward when there's not always a super clear direction. So I think kind of that like practical experience, and then also just the financial considerations definitely. Yeah.
Great. And Julie, a similar question for you. How do you define your own civic pathway, and in your professional work, how do you stay true to those values?
Yeah, definitely. I would say that my civic pathway is kind of directly represented in the work that I do. Ensuring clean air for communities across the country is really the work that I do at EPA. And so I'd say pursuing that, or just pursuing an environmental career and kind of working in the climate space, is something that is so deeply ingrained in the civic pathway that I'd say I have. I think something that I would like to kind of break out is kind of break out of the environmental space in my personal life and really kind of drill into volunteering in the community. And I would love to volunteer at an animal shelter and a food pantry. And I think just with everything happening right now, it's important to, I don't want to just be pigeonholed in one space, but be able to have an impact in other spaces as well, and kind of give back to the community in different ways. And I forget the second part of the question was.
How do you stay true to your values in your professional life, your civic values?
Yes. Well, I guess I would say it's my career is a pretty mirror image of my values, despite the current administration. And I think the work that I'm doing is still very representative of what I believe, ensuring that there is clean air and water in communities that are like disproportionately impacted by pollution, and also impacted by so many other difficult things as well. So I think really something that's important about my career path is I'm following my passions, I'm following what I believe in, and I think I'm just taking what my kind of civic values and hopes and dreams to pursue are, and translating that to my career.
Thank you. So Connor, what's next for you? How is your civic pathway going to continue on? I know you don't have specific answers, but what are your sort of thoughts on those next steps? Let's do that.
What's next? So I'm applying to law school right now. I want to be like, because of the PE Green program, because of the interacting with the students who are incarcerated, like I want to be a public defender. which is interesting looking at in the context of what I did with the PD Green program, because the truth is there's sort of this path to take for public defense, which is or kind of working with justice impacted populations. There's the social work end, there's the law end. The social work end really are the people making the relationships and like giving them self-agency. And I'm choosing the law angle, which is a little scary because I worked in the public defender's office this summer, and the relationships between attorney and client are not like the relationships you're making with a one-on-one tutor education, which is scary because I think one of the most important parts with the justice impacted population, and particularly with the PD Green program, one of the biggest things taught in the trainings is self-agency. And like you're not teaching down, like you're teaching with, it's working together. And I think that approaching law school and being a public defender and criminal law with a mindset of my goal is to help them be their own agent in addition to advocate for them, I think is going to be crucial. And honestly, I think set me apart because, you know, the social workers this summer worked way more with the clients than the lawyers did. And I think that's a problem. Maybe it's a logistical practicality, a systemic issue, but maybe it's also just, I want to take an extra hour to like sit down and get to know you, and that's what's going to make me the best advocate. So I think that's what's next for me. Applying to law school, sure as heck, hope I get in, and maybe some money too would be nice. But no, but yeah, I want to be a lawyer, but I really want to focus on self-agency, public defense, or indigent defense broadly, with kind of the mental health angle with clinical psych that I'm really passionate about, which is related to education and all these different things. So.
Does anyone have anything that, before I turn it over to our audience, is there anything that you'd like to share or add that I didn't ask or that you forgot to say or anything?
I guess was not told to say this, but I'll do a second plug for the Tisch Summer Fellows program because I loved it so much. And so if you have any inkling that you think you might want to apply, just do it once applications are up. Yeah, I think one of the things that I've learned is like the opportunities, like if you don't put yourself out there, the opportunity, you will not get the opportunity. So might as well put yourself out there and see where it goes. I feel like that's some of the best advice that I've gotten. Just go with it, don't overthink it, just go for it.
Great, thank you all. I really appreciate your time. So thank our speakers.
Say there are students.
Hi, thank you so much for coming to speak about this. And I think what struck me is that your Tisch Summer Fellow organizations that you worked with, it seems like a pretty clear pathway to the work that you're currently doing or hoping to do and applying to law school, which is amazing. But when I was a student at Tufts, some of my internships were sort of the opposite experience, which I did not do Tisch Summer Fellows. But I wonder, you know, even if it's not through Tisch Summer Fellows, if you had sort of an internship experience where it was as equally as important to impacting your pathway, but maybe in a different way in terms of like, you're at an organization or working on a specific topic and you're like, this is interesting, it's definitely not for me, I don't want to do this, or, you know, something along those lines that you could speak about.
I guess I'll get off. Yeah, I guess this actually was in my Tisch Summer Fellows internship, and I had a great experience at Center for Health, Environment, and Justice. But I think something that made me realize is that it's a very small nonprofit, and I realized, I mean, you wear a lot of different hats, you're going to a lot of different, put in a lot of different avenues, and you're not always going to be doing the work that you want to do. And sometimes, I don't know, at a small nonprofit, there's a lot of focus on fundraising. And then I saw some of like the higher ups just like working kind of crazy hours and kind of making it seem like that was the norm. And so I think that made me realize like, hey, maybe the super small nonprofit space isn't for me, but the environmental work is. And then I guess another aspect is I was doing like a lot of social media communications work. And I think I just realized like, hey, like social media is my thing, but maybe like learning more about how to educate folks about like different environmental issues like toxic chemicals is something I'm interested in. So I think that, yeah, those are things that I took out from it. And I think, yeah, it really helped develop my career and just thinking of like what to maybe not go after and what kind of opportunities to follow.
Yeah, I would say my Tisch Summer Fellowship also kind of was great in some ways and also had some drawbacks. And I think that that's kind of the beauty of a real internship. Something I figured out pretty quickly that I didn't like about working at a small nonprofit is that there wasn't really a ton of supervision or direction. So I think that it often just kind of felt like I was throwing a bunch of things at the wall and I wasn't really sure what was going to stick or what I should focus on. So I've definitely taken that just kind of as a personal learning of how to be successful for myself in a workplace. And then I've also kind of, since my Tisch Summer Fellowship, done a ton of similar work, but at many different organizations. So Speak for the Trees was one of them. I did some independent consulting for the Charles River Watershed Association. I worked here at Tufts in kind of a GIS consultant capacity. So I think I really honed in on like what I wanted to do, but not exactly where I wanted to do it or like what kind of organization. And I feel really fortunate in municipal work, especially at the city of Boston, that it's a place where people stay for their whole careers. And that's not really something that happens these days at a lot of organizations. So I think, yeah, I just kind of came to realize that I wanted something where I could follow something through and over many, many decades. And also it's just nice to have, I guess, like funding and operations that aren't super reliant on grant or federal funding that just come out of the city budget. So I think those are kind of things I learned.
I think I've been very fortunate and early in my career where things kind of have made sense. I would say the only thing, and it's absolutely rite of passage that everyone has to go through, is it taught me that I don't want to be in a position where I do data entry. That is the only thing I learned that I like, that was useful if you didn't know.
Any other questions?
Hi, yeah, sorry. Thank you guys so much, by the way, for sharing your experiences. I kind of wanted to ask a little bit about your application process to the program. How was that for you? Did you kind of go in knowing you wanted to do exactly the work that you were doing? Or like, what was kind of your idea of what you thought you would do at Tisch Summer Fellows when you applied?
So I was kind of late in the game. The only reason I ended up doing, or I guess the way I got connected into my Tisch Summer Fellowship is that it was a position that was still open because they didn't get the right type of people applying in the first round. So I think I was really fortunate in that way, and that it was very clear to me what I would be doing. But I definitely think something I encourage people who do apply and get to the interviews is to be really transparent about like what things you want to do and super intentional about it. Because I think in my interview, there was a lot of discussion around like, what can I do? What do I want to do? What do I want to learn? So I think as with all internships, it's super important that there's kind of this like other aspect to it of professional development and career goals. So I think just keep that in mind throughout your application, I'd say.
Yeah, keeping in mind that this was, I guess, five-ish years ago, almost 6 years ago now. Wow. So looking back, I don't know, I was looking at all the roles and the internships that were posted, and I kind of narrowed it down to the environmental ones that I was interested in. And Center for Health, Environment, and Justice really stood out kind of in a unique way in that the founder of the nonprofit and leader at the time, Lois Gibbs, is an environmental activist who is or was from Love Canal, New York, and basically helped bring justice to a community that was really heavily impacted by toxic chemicals and contaminants from big industry. And so she kind of brought together her community and was an activist that helped push for Superfund legislation. So helping lead to toxic chemical cleanups across of the most heavily contaminated sites across the country. And that program is still here today. So when I learned about Lois Gibbs, and I'm from upstate New York, so she was around Buffalo, and I'm from Syracuse. I learned about Lois Gibbs in, I don't know, 8th, 9th grade. And when I heard about the work that she did, that's what made me want to do environmental work. And then I saw the position at Tisch, and I just knew I had to apply. And I had other ones I was interested in too, but this was really the front runner one for me. So it just stood out in a really unique way, which I don't know if would happen for everyone, but I just knew what to apply for, and I heard great things about the program too.
I think for applications for the public interest space in general, especially early on, I think it's important to know that more so than maybe if you're going for something more STEM like engineering or corporate, it's a lot more values based. And I think that is an important thing to recognize, that your ability to discuss how your values align with the position you're applying for is very important. And I've gotten a lot of feedback from people that have interviewed me, that they appreciate, one, you aligning your values and life experiences with the work, but then also making sure to recognize limitations in the perspective you might have and what you're excited to fill that with other people's perspectives about. So recognizing where you're coming from, I think, is really important. Being able to be very fluent in your discussion of your values and how it aligns with the work, I think in the public interest space in general, early on at least, is very important. So reflecting on your civic pathway and mission is meritable.
And also there's 2 information sessions coming up. If you want to really dig into the application process, I will be doing those on November 17th from 12 to 1 in the Rad Room, and December 4th from 5 to 6 in the Eaton 250. So you can register for one of those. And I will talk a lot about the applications. What are hands? Is there time for maybe 1 or 2 more? Is that right? Was there one back there? A hand? No?
Hi, thanks for being here today. This has been great. Just kind of going further on what you just said, Connor, about just wondering how you guys have, a lot of these programs and the internships you guys had, and maybe how you dealt with populations you weren't familiar with or you weren't necessarily a part of, or communities, either directly or indirectly that your work impacts, and how that's kind of changed the way you look at other things, even personally and professionally.
Yeah, I mean, I think, okay, so for my work tutoring uniquely, I think that, I have a very limited perspective when it comes to the justice impact of populations. Everything I know about carcerality, like 99% is not from my lived experience. It's from what I've learned from others, and being aware of that is extremely important when you're teaching someone else in terms of, but I mean, I feel like I'm plugging TSO so much, but that's a good thing, right? That's something that the Tisch Summer Fellows curriculum had. In the orientation, they broke down into these different facets of how to think about your work and sort of the upstream and downstream factors, and how you're affecting people on the individual, but also policy level and all the way up the ladder. All of that curriculum is really important in reflecting those kind of things, and those are all things that people have thought about a lot through research and how to. But I think for me uniquely, when it comes to face-to-face work, which I don't know if all the summer fellows are doing, but at the end of the day, when you're doing public interest work, you're going to meet people whose lives you're affecting with your work. I think just it's really hard sometimes. Try so hard not to other them. Maybe that's obvious, but my big thing when I'm working with students is we're both students. We're working at I'm in college. You're doing a college course right now. We're both undergrads, and what's the difference between me unfortunately you're confined to this space, but you know, what's the difference between me helping out with my classmate with homework in the library? And I try to frame it that way, and then just like maybe I'm exposing myself a little bit, but like I'm a goof with my friends. So I'm like a goof with the students too. Like I told the students once for one of the P Green courses I taught that if they finished the problem set by the end, I would do the worm for the whole class. And I did the worm for the whole class. So it's just like be yourself, recognize where you are, but also don't let recognizing where you are stop you from being yourself and making like a true friend. There's people inside that like I really look back and I'm like, you know, those people are people that distinctly impact my life and I still think about and like are my friends. So did I answer your question? So
Yeah, I guess kind of coming from different lens at Center for Health, Environment, and Justice, we put on this is me and a co-intern who was also a Tisch Summer Fellow, also named Jenna. Let's see. Oh, yes, we put on a weekly webinar series and we interviewed environmental justice leaders across the country who were being impacted by toxic chemicals in their communities. And I think something that was really important for me is realizing that I hadn't lived through that experience. So although I was like interviewing them, you step back, you let them tell their story, and you kind of just allow them to tell their story and don't take up too much space, just allow them to kind of be on the podium and kind of spread the lessons that they learned and the work that they do. So that was a big takeaway for me.
Yeah, I guess from my side, some of the things we do at the city, I think, help a lot of that. We do a lot of language and communication access work. So we try to communicate a lot of things visually instead of just in words. All of our community outreach is in English and then also languages based on where we're working. And I have learned there's this really cool tool to make sure that the reading level you're writing in is appropriate for the public. So we usually shoot for around high school level. And I found that that's really helped. I work in very technical projects. And so it's often really good to just stop and think about whether this will make sense. And another thing I've really kind of tried to champion in my role is that open data isn't the gold standard. I think it's great if data is open, but oftentimes our constituents and our people who are dealing with these problems daily don't have the time or the ability to actually access that data and look at it and understand what it means. So I put a lot of time and energy into making sure that it's understandable what people are looking at and also making tools that people can just go right onto and see the information without having to download it and do their own analysis.
All right, well, it's just about one, unless there's a burning question. All right, well, thank you again for that. Thank you all for the questions.